So, Mario Diaz-Balart, welcome to the Daily News Editorial Board. For our readers and viewers, would you please introduce yourself, just give us a little bit about your background, and then let's get right to the issues on Amendments 5 and 6.
Great. First, thank you. My name is Mario Diaz-Balart. I'm a member of Congress from the 25th District of Florida, which represents a large part of Collier County and a large part of Miami-Dade County and a very small part of Monroe County. And I've been the congressman for district now going on 8 years.
And
I should add a Republican. I know you need to have that for the record.
there you go.
There you go.
And you're here to tell us to vote no on Amendments 5 and 6.
Yes, and there are a number of reasons. First, I brought an article which I have here. I left here from Politico, which is a Washington publication that just follows the money of these. I guess it's $4 million that those who have put it on the ballot have raised to just get it on the ballot. And if you follow the money, what is pretty evident is that this is not Mother Teresa putting it on the ballot. This is, and the Democrats and the left trying to do through the constitutional amendment process in Florida what they have not been able to do through elections. And that is to create more white Democrat districts for Congress and for the State House and for the State Senate. And in order to do so, they have put this on the ballot, and that's why they're funding this. So it's George Soros has put a ton of money. Even Acorn has put money. SEIU has put money. This is a Democrat/left coalition trying to get their way to get more Democrats, particularly white Democrats, elected at the expense of minorities, and that's how they're doing it. And I'll explain in some greater detail how they're doing that, why they're doing that. But I just want to put that on the record, that this is not funded by nonpartisan Mother Teresa type groups. It's funded by the left with a purpose in mind, a political purpose in mind. And I don't have a problem with people doing political things, but they're trying to pass it off as some good government proposal when it has nothing to do with that. It is a political purpose. Now, what are the problems that I have with it? Number one is that it will devastate minority communities and the ability of minorities to elect candidates of their choice. And number two is that it is totally misleading and unworkable. I think we could all agree that what they are saying, the reason that they say they need this, is to avoid districts that look like this. These ink blots.
Hold it up closer. Okay, could you describe for our viewers what they're looking at, please?
Yeah, this is what you keep hearing is that they want to avoid districts that are non-compact, that look like this.
Is that a real district?
Well, let me tell you what this is. They also say, I'm getting to that.
Oh, no, I'm just helping.
This is real. This is real. What they're also saying is that you have to that in order to avoid districts that look like this, that you have to follow municipal boundaries, that they have to be compact, follow municipal boundaries. Here's the problem. You have to answer the question. This is not a district. This is the city of Orlando. This is here. Another city. Let me find out which one this is. This is Tallahassee. Now, not very compact. If you read the language of their amendment, it says you have to make them compact and follow municipal boundaries. And it says specifically in Part 3 of their language that those two carry equal weight. And remember, they want to put that in the Florida Constitution. So here's the question. If you follow municipal boundaries, if this were to pass, you'd be in violation of the Florida Constitution because it's not compact. If you make it compact, which is what they're saying, it would be in violation of the Constitution of this own proposal because you would not be following municipal boundaries. Which one do you do? Now, so when I tell you it's not workable, it isn't workable. Number two, they say that you have to create districts. It all sounds really good. That doesn't hurt incumbents or help incumbents. That doesn't hurt a political party or help a political party. Well, here's the question. But they say that you have to be compact, which we've already seen, they already contradict themselves. And they mention as the district that is the grossly gerrymandered. They always mention Congressional District 3, which is now currently represented by an African-American Democrat from Jacksonville. Goes from Jacksonville to Orlando. They say that that one would go away. Well, let me ask you this. Would that not hurt an incumbent? it would then be in violation of this constitutional amendment. If you don't draw it compact, it would be in violation of the constitutional amendment. If you draw it compact and that district goes away, which is the one that they mention, you're in violation of the same constitutional amendment that they're putting on the ballot. It's not workable. It is absolutely not workable. You can't hurt political parties or help political parties. However you draw these districts, doesn't matter who draws them or how you do it, it's either going to help an incumbent or hurt an incumbent, help a party or hurt a party, not the two main parties either, the 13 and 14 parties that we have in the state of Florida. I mention all these things because reasonable people who look at the facts will tell you it's not workable. And let me quote from their own, from the language. It says, the order in which the standards within subsection 2, which are the ones that I just mentioned, are set forth shall not be read to establish any priority of one standard over the other within that subsection. So in other words, compactness, it has to be compact, and yet it has to follow municipal boundaries, and yet it can't hurt a political party or help a political party, help an incumbent or hurt an incumbent. You can't draw them. It is an absolute lie, shameful lie on the people of Florida. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, we all would agree that this is what they're saying that they don't want to do. That's what they tell the public. Well, if you don't draw this in Orlando, you're violating the constitutional amendment. Which one is it?
Can you tell me what's in the white space in the middle? What exists?
This is the parts of Central Florida. This is the city of Orlando. Because remember, cities were not incorporated to either look good on a map or frankly even for representation purposes. Well, they're for economic purposes, they're for incorporation purposes. So, but we can get into the whole aspect of whether it makes sense to follow or doesn't make sense to follow municipal boundaries. But the reality is, what I'm telling you is, you can't draw them.
I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know
what's
I don't know what's here. I don't know what's I can show you city after city of non-compact cities. So first place, it's not workable. It's unworkable. Which is why when the state legislature, and I have the invitations here, and I saw the video, and I asked you all to look at it. You can get it on their webpage. If you go to the state legislature, you can see they invited the members of the press and the editorial boards to draw districts based on the criteria that these individuals, these groups from the left are doing for political purposes, want to put in the Constitution. And remember, once you put it in the Constitution, that's it. You can't change it statutorily. And the press was there. They invited all the press who wanted to go, and they started from the Panhandle. And they said, let's just draw one district that would be legal based on these new standards. The reporters tried to do one district. It wasn't even a minority district. They couldn't do it. Because you can't draw districts based on this criteria. That's one of the problems that I have.
Wouldn't you
However,
just start at the western end of the Panhandle,
Yeah.
go this way until
Yeah.
you get to 400,000 people or
Couldn't do it.
600,000 people, and then draw a north-south line and say that's your district?
Correct. You can't do that because it would hurt an incumbent, or it would help an incumbent, or it would hurt a party, or help a party, because you're not following municipal boundary lines. You can't do it. You cannot draw it. It is literally just legally and geographically impossible to draw districts that comply to what they want to put in the Constitution. This is not statutory. This is in the Constitution. But that's not even the worst problem that I have with it. No, I'll answer any questions you have, obviously.
Okay, does the amendment itself say that it shall not hurt or help an incumbent?
Yes, it actually says that. I know, and this is the thing, that when you start reading it and you realize reality, it almost becomes laughable. It says, shall not be drawn with the intent to favor or disfavor a political party or incumbent.
With the intent to.
Yes, intent to.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Well, but wait a second. If you draw a line different than what exists today, and you are hurting an incumbent, if you get rid of District 3, which is the one that they always talk about, you get rid of it to make it compact, you are intentionally getting rid of that district. You are intentionally doing something. You're going to draw districts in the affirmative. So that's it.
But the intent, their intent might be to get rid of the district, but their intent was not to hurt the party. Their intent was to, and I totally get what you mean.
Sure.
One of my questions would be then don't we use that term intent and a lot behind it in our law already? Like that's a very used term.
Yes, Yes, but
and
here's
it's a very deciding factor on.
Yes.
Joe Schmo might be like,
Well,
well,
but here's-
clearly your intent is
okay.
this,
Well,
but
here's the problem, and you're putting this in the Constitution. To answer your questions, there's one of two options here. Either this has the intent of hurting political parties or hurting incumbents or not, or it will do absolutely nothing. In either case, you're lying to the people of the state of Florida. Because
So-
if your intent, and it, I mean, again, I'll leave you the language, it's out there. So the reality is that, as I told you before, and I pose this as a challenge. If somebody wants to change the Constitution, it's a big deal. Shouldn't they have to show what the effects are? Shouldn't they have to first show you what the effects of their change of the Constitution mean? Do you realize that nobody's even asked them? Nobody has asked them the question, show me what the results would be if this thing were to become the law of the land in the Constitution.
I've asked them.
Well, you have, and you've done some.
And they say they can't tell me yet.
They
'cause
can't
don't
tell you
know
that.
'cause it's not.
Right, so they want to change the Constitution. And they with a straight face tell you, and they spent $4 million to get it on the ballot. And these are all political groups out there, and they're telling you, and I mean, none of you or us were born yesterday. So do you generally believe that they don't know what the effects are going to be? By the way, if they don't even know, and then that's reason enough to not support it. And if they do know and they're lying to you, that's reason again to not support it. So which one is it? They're trying to change the Constitution, and they've told you with a straight face, as they did you, I know you asked them, that they don't know what the effects of this change of the Constitution are going to be. And somehow, not knowing, they've managed to spend so far over $4 million?
Yeah.
They know.
What are they spending the $4 million on? Does it really cost $4 million
To put it on the
get something
ballot.
on the ballot?
Because they
More
hired,
expensive?
well, you can do it in different ways. You can do it the way of, people believe in it, or you can just hire people to do so, and they've hired people to do so. But, so there's about $3 to $4 million. Don't quote me exactly on the number, but it's over $3 million.
And isn't a lot of that going to advertising at this point as well?
No, that was just to get on the ballot.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever, $3 to $4 million to get on the ballot, I'm sure they're gonna spend more now on advertising.
Look,
But remember, that's not even the big problem that I have with it. I haven't gotten into the real issue here, in my perspective.
hit it.
My perspective, the real issue, a little bit for background. For 20 plus years, I have been working on, and I know most, you guys, some of you know that about me. For 20 plus years, and that's frankly how I first became known in this state, working on and fighting for more fair minority representation on the state and national level. In 1992, I sued along with Corrine Brown, and then she was a colleague of mine in the State House. She's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. We sued to get more minority representation in the State House, State Senate, and congressional levels. In 1992, that cycle, so it was actually pre-92. It was for the 92 election cycle. In that cycle, we sued. The Democrats controlled the State House, the State Senate, and the governor's mansion. They drew the State House districts and the State Senate districts, and because of our pressure, we were able to, frankly, shame them into drawing more districts where minorities would have a possibility of getting elected. Before 1992, you'll recall that we had no African American member of Congress from Florida, not one, and we had one Hispanic member of Congress. We were pushing, for Corrine Brown and I, for districts that would allow 4 African Americans to get elected in the state of Florida and 2 Hispanic members. These same groups, many of them, fought us tooth and nail. And because of to make a very long story much shorter, the state legislature, the Democrats who controlled, couldn't pass a congressional plan, so that was drawn by the federal courts. We went to the federal courts. We were asking for 4 and 2. The federal courts drew the plan that had 3 African Americans and 2 Hispanics. The NAACP, all these same groups that are funding these efforts, fought us tooth and nails in the courts during that process because they did not want to have more than 1 district where African Americans could elect a member of Congress. Yes, including the NAACP. I was there. I was in court.
Did they say why?
Yes. No, they said that because it wasn't workable, because it would never happen, because they didn't work. All sorts of excuses like they're doing now. But I can tell you that in the remedy stage, so you know, the NAACP, they're an organization that has a history, and we all know them. They fought against districts that Corinne and I were able to fight for and got three African American, three districts in Congress where African Americans could elect candidates of their choice. They performed, because there they are, and 2 Hispanics. 10 years later, by the way, then I was involved in the redistricting process. Then we were able to keep the 3, in essence, you had to deal with the population changes, keep the 3 African American districts, and we grew 1 more Hispanic district, right, where the Hispanics could elect the candidate of choice, which is the one that I currently represent. Those same groups fought us tooth and nails in the courts. So you need to understand that this is nothing new. These are the same groups that have been fighting against those minority districts. If this passes, and I'll explain to you why, we are going to go back to pre-1992 or 1992 levels, where we will lose the one that they themselves point to, the one that's currently represented by Corinne Brown as a gerrymandered district that must go, right? Gerrymandered by who? The federal courts drew that district. Now, they don't say that to you. They don't say that to the people. They say, oh, politicians are drawing their districts. That was drawn by the federal courts. They fought it then, and they continue to fight it.
Kind of. You have been the benefactor of some redistricting, new lines drawn in some unusual ways. I mean, of their own. I mean,
let's talk about that.
Let's talk about
that.
Okay.
I told you that I fought for more minority representation. And in the last census, because of the explosive growth of Hispanics here as well in Collier County, I know a lot of people don't always know that, but just look around you, right? The explosive growth of Hispanics in Collier County, Florida all of a sudden we always thought that Florida was going to get 1 more new congressional member of district. Remember that? And then way after, pretty much late in the game, all of a sudden when the census numbers comes out, we were then told that we're going to have 2 new members of Congress in Florida. And the question was, where was one of them going to go? And it was
we got one of these things.
Well, let me tell you what you got. You got a district that is compact. You got a district that's over 65% Hispanic. You got a district where that Hispanic in a county that's according to the Voting Rights Act, a Section 5 county under the VRA. And you'll recall that before that, when the Democrats drew the district 10 years earlier, remember they had drawn a state house district that went Miami-Dade to Collier? This last Republican legislature tried to separate that and have it Dade only, Collier only, and you remember what happened? The court stepped in and they said, the law requires you to draw that district.
Okay.
So District 25 that I am privileged, and I have been privileged to represent for almost 8 years, that I am not going to be representing for the next 2 years.
That's my next question.
Yes, that I'm not going to represent for the next 2 years. That one is required, Jeff, by law. By law. And no matter, it's required by law under the Voting Rights Act, under Section 2, and under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act.
Okay, but you weren't required to go from District 25 to this new district because it was more convenient.
You mean why I'm now running for a different district?
It all seems so situational.
Well, but let me ask you this. If you can't have it both ways. They say, oh, Diaz-Balart drew the district for himself, and that's what we have to avoid, and now he's leaving the district because it's not a good district. Well, which one is it? Did I draw it for myself? If I drew it for myself and I could just draw it at will, how can they say then that I'm leaving? Because it's not a good district. Well, by the way, both of those things are false. I was part of a process the legislature approved districts that were legal.
Oh, yeah.
And, I've always, that's for another conversation why I'm running for the other district, and we've talked about that. But the reality is you just can't draw the districts that you like because this is all litigated, and there are federal statutes that comply, and, the Voting Rights Act being one of them. Here's the problem. By the way, to add insult to injury, the people who wrote this put Voting Rights Act language in these proposals, and they say, no, you see, we're trying to protect those minority districts. We even put Voting Rights language in there. Well, that's disingenuous and frankly false, and I'll tell you why. Because if you don't know the law on these issues, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been dealing with this issue for now 20 plus years. If you don't know court rulings, it sounds great. But they're speaking from both sides of their mouth. On one side of their mouth, they're saying District 3 and others like that have to go away, the minority districts. On the other side of their mouth, they're saying, we're going to protect minority districts. Well, you all the other journalists, ask them, which one is it? Do they want to protect the minority districts, the African Americans in particular, that are not compact? Or do they want to make those compact and then not protect the minority districts? They keep speaking out of both sides of their mouth and nobody's asked them the questions. Now let me tell you something that's key. The U.S. Supreme Court has continued to clarify redistricting throughout the years. They continuously do this. There was a recent ruling, Strickland case, North Carolina, which in essence, and it's a short one, you guys can read it. I commend you I ask you to do that. In essence, what it says, without getting into all the details, is this. It says, states, you can draw non-compact minority districts. And they actually say, in some cases, you should. It's actually a good thing to do. Unless there is a state prohibition. And then they furthermore say the following, this is a key thing. If a district, minority district, really an access district, is under 50% voting age population, so it's not 50% population, it's a higher standard, voting age population, it has no Section 2 protection under the Voting Rights Act. And then under Strickland they say, so you can draw them, states, but if you have a state prohibition, sorry, there is no Voting Rights Act protection, i.e., you can't draw them. This is a state prohibition. Because remember, just like in the Strickland case in North Carolina, their prohibition was, I think, compactness as well. They've got to be compact. Now, so the question has to be, which are the districts and how many are there in Florida, minority districts that are not compact, that have, according to Strickland, no Voting Rights Act protection? There are 19 of them. If this passes, people can support what they want. If this passes, there are going to be 19 less districts. State House, State Senate, and Congress will lose 2 in Congress. At least 1, maybe 2 African American. By the way, it does not affect the Hispanic districts of Congress because they're over 55%. They're actually the lowest Hispanic one is probably 65%. So they're all way above the 50% threshold. So they all do have Section 2 Voting Rights Act protection. And in the case of 2 of them, they have Section 2 and Section 5 Voting Rights Act protection. Because Collier is a Section 5 county and so is Monroe. So those 2 Hispanic districts, including District 25, which by the way, will be required by law under Section 5 and Section 2. End of story. But there are 2 African American districts for Congress that are under 50% voting age population, that are not compact, that don't follow municipal boundaries, that would have to go away if this thing passes. And in the state legislature and the state senate, you're looking at the same thing. And there you're affecting not only African American districts, but also Hispanic districts. That has been my fight for over 20 years with Corrine Brown. And people say, how is it possible that you and Corrine Brown can see eye to eye on this issue? Because her and I have been fighting for these issues for over 20 years. Way before there was a seat for Congress that I could run in or that she could run in, we've been fighting for this for over 20, 25 years. That has been the fight, and these individuals and these groups that are on the other side of this are the same ones. Now, why do they not want the minority districts? Because what they have done traditionally, which is why we didn't have any African American members of Congress before 1992, is what they would do is they would get, as Corrine Brown likes to call them, they would use the African American as body parts for other districts. They would get, that's what she says, and she's right. What they would do, very simple, because look, I posed the question, are the African Americans a new, because you might say the Hispanic population growth is a relatively new phenomenon, all right? African Americans? No, they've been here forever. So how is it that the Democrats never drew an African American, a district where an African American could be elected in Congress before 1992? Why? The population there? Yes. Are they in large groups? Yes. Do they comply to the jingles requirement? Another case that says, the Supreme Court said that the populations have to be compact, numerous enough, and that there has to be block voting against them. So you can't draw stretched out minority districts unless those 3 things are complied to. And by the way, which poses another question. If you're not allowed to look at political criteria, how can you draw districts that are constitutional according to Jingles. You can't. That's just another separate issue.
We have 5 minutes left.
Yes. So here's a reality. What will this do? Number one, this is not a good government thing. This is radical groups trying to get more white Democrats elected in Congress and in the State House at the expense of mostly African American and Hispanics.
Which ones are the radical groups?
Well, Acorn, Emily's List. I can give you the list. Just look, it's $4 million. There it is. I don't have that with me. I'll get that to you.
League of Women
right now.
Voters.
What's that?
League
of Women Voters.
Radicals?
What's that?
Radicals?
No, but there's a lot of them. There's a bunch that are not radicals, but Soros, I would tell you he's a radical. I would personally tell you. That's my opinion.
You said radical groups.
Radical groups and individuals.
I don't
Absolutely.
want to take up the rest of
Yeah,
your
yeah. No. I mean, radical. These are Democrat political groups that are trying to get more white Democrat districts at the expense of Hispanics and African Americans. Number one. Number two is it's unworkable, and number three is it's a big lie.
May I ask, why do you think they're trying to get white Democrats?
Yeah.
Because look at the history. That's what they did before. In other words, don't take my word for it. Before 1992, they didn't draw any districts where minorities where African Americans could get elected for Congress.
It's 2010.
Yes.
Have things
And
not
they're-
changed, perhaps,
They're,
for them?
well, they're trying to go back to the same thing. What would they do before? They would get Hispanics or African Americans. And again, to be fair, the Hispanic explosion of population is relatively new, but the African Americans are not. And they would get them, as Kareem Brown said, as body parts. They would get large chunks of African American populations and put them in districts that are competitive districts in order to make them white Democrat districts. Not enough African Americans to elect an African American, but enough African Americans who vote 90% Democrats to almost guarantee a white liberal Democrat. And don't take my word for it. That's what they did, which is why before 1992, even though the African Americans were still here, the Democrats and a lot of these groups who fought us in court, who supported them, refused to draw districts where African Americans could elect candidates of their choice in order to draw more districts where white liberal Democrats could get elected. And by the way, if you read the political article, they actually even admit that. You're scratching your head, and I'm not quite sure where I've confused you.
This whole idea about the Democrats, this is a whole thing pushed by Democrats wanting to get white Democrats in office.
More white Democrats elected,
and which
yes.
effectively removing African Americans
So that's the way they want to do it.
under the Obama administration.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
but
where
this
I
is
go.
well. But let me tell you, you.
That's
in
not
that-
you. That's just
no. I know. But because in the NAACP, let me add to your confusion.
2 minutes.
The NAACP is also on that side. In 1992, the white Democrats, including the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader, the Democratic Party, the NAACP, fought our efforts to create 3 and 4 African American districts where African Americans could elect candidates of their choice. They even went to court to try to avoid that, and they were pushing for 1. Now, isn't that also hard to believe? What I'm telling you is this: don't take my word for it. Look at the facts. But I will challenge you in this thing. If in fact history shows that they were fighting in court to block us from having 3 and 4 African American districts, and then I think you need to admit that yes, that's what they were doing, and they're the same groups that are doing it today.
I would never say that you were lying about that.
No, I know that.
I'm more curious in
Yeah.
the reasons why. What were their reasons?
Their
why?
reasons were because for them, in order to draw more Democrat districts,
So the NAACP wants more white Democrat.
what I'm telling you is that in 1992,
Uh-huh.
the NAACP went to court, and they participated in the lawsuit in the federal court in Tallahassee, and they were speaking against plans that had 3 and 4 African American members of Congress, and they were supporting plans that had only 1. And that's
See, that's
there.
again, I go.
Can I,
I agree with
Yeah,
you.
no,
I agree with you.
Can I
And
just
that was,
ask
by the way,
a
that was in the
quick
remedy
question?
stage. That was in the remedy stage. Because
Yeah.
publicly they'd say
10
they
seconds.
supported
The
it.
quick last
But in the
question.
remedy stage, they fought us in court.
Time out.
What exactly was your role in the last redistrict?
I was the chairman of the in the state house. In those days, I was in the state legislature. I was in the state house. I chaired the committee that was in charge of in the house to draw the congressional districts.
Okay.
Yes. So, by the way,
That's
so
it.
I do understand. When I tell you that this is unworkable, and I would challenge you to ask them to draw a plan that's legal based on this criteria, you cannot draw it. And I think the
Mario,
onus should be on them.
That's got to be the last word. We're
Always a
over
pleasure.
time.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's hard for me to believe too.
Go ahead, Kelly.